Hey, happy Friday. We are back for another episode of Funding Fridays. If you haven't met me before, my name's Debbie Lewis. I'm the Regional Ecosystem Manager at NatWest Enterprise, covering the East of England, put my teeth in, the East of England and the Midlands. So why did we come up with this podcast? Well, NatWest, really well known for banking and borrowing, but sadly less well known for the fantastic range of enterprise support that is available if you're an SME in the UK. And through all of this free support that we offer, people were saying to me, Debbie, that's great. And I love this event and that workshop and all the coaching. But what I could really do with is finding out where these blooming pots of money are. I know that money exists, free money. Can you help me to find it? And I thought, what a great idea. My network is full of people who have got funding available, just like Gary, who is joining us today. So Gary, thank you so much for giving up some of your precious time to come on and talk to us about the money that you have available at GrowthWorks.
It's an absolute pleasure. It's lovely to speak to you.
Thanks so much. So tell us who you are and what you do.
Well, my name is Gary Parker. I am the High Growth Network Manager for the GrowthWorks program, which is a piece of work that has been around for a little while now, probably just over 18 months. But like you, we sometimes find that people are not as familiar with all the things that we do as they might be. So that's one of the challenges that we constantly have, is making sure that we're educating people as to where these pots of money are, because it does get more complicated the more you delve into it. There's lots of money, but often for different types of projects. So it's not just knowing what's out there, it's understanding what's best suited for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us a little bit, first of all, about the geography that you cover, because we understand that sometimes these grants can be a bit of a postcode lottery. So if you are listening in another region and this location doesn't appeal, please do check out your nearest alternative funder, or check out another episode because they will be back from your region. So Gary, where do you cover?
Well, we cover Cambridgeshire in the simplest terms. So it's the combined local authorities for Cambridge and Peterborough, CPCA, who put this programme together, including the grant funding pots. So it's a fairly big area, fairly sort of, geographically a fairly big patch. But one thing I would say, just as kind of a kickoff, is that if anyone contacts us and is interested in finding out about grant funding, one of the tools that we have within the team is something called Grant Finder. And as you'd imagine by the term, it's a way for us to use an online platform. It's a real-time piece of software that allows us to search on grants across the entire country by geography or by industry type. So whilst we might not have the ideal product or service for what people are looking for, hopefully the very least we can do is to do a quick search for them and say, well, if you're based in another part of the country, or if you're moving to another part of the country and you're looking for support in those areas, we might be able to give you a little short list of places to go and have a look and people to contact.
Amazing. Grant Finder, cunningly titled.
Absolutely. Fiendishly clever. I'm sure it took someone a long time to come up with that title.
If only everything were that simple. So Gary, honing in on what you offer. So talk to us. I know that you provide an awful lot of support, but let's get to the nuts and bolts of the pots of money that's available. What have you got for us?
Okay, well, there are two grant pots within the GrowthWorks program. The first is what we refer to as a revenue grant. And in simple terms, what that means is that if you are spending money on external services, if you're outsourcing something to a professional service provider who could be a digital web designer or a digital marketing agency or a patent attorney or IP lawyer, accountant, or anyone that's helping you with the growth of your business, there is usually a commercial fee involved. So you will pay them a sum of money to do a piece of work and they'll do that for you and deliver it. Now, the revenue grants will allow you to apply for matched funding. So on a 50-50 basis, if you've got a project up to the value of £20,000, we could match fund that 50-50. So you would end up effectively only paying 10 and the other 10 would come from us. Now, because it's a grant, I do have to make this absolutely clear, because some people have not applied for a grant in a business setting before. Grants are claimed retrospectively, which means that you need the money up front, but then you claim it back as soon as you've paid the bill. So that's, it's a nice way of getting half back, like a cash back, if you like, for doing a piece of work that you would do all by yourself. The other pot is what we call CapEx, or capital expenditure.
Gary, before you go into that other pot,
okay.
Can I grill you on some of these?
Absolutely grill me.
So fantastic. And this is the type of work that SMEs up and down the country, we are encouraging them to do. Don't do it all yourself. Outsource. Use a specialist, and their first response is, oh, well, that's going to cost me some money. So this is 50% less than you would be spending if you were doing it without the grant. You pay it up front, but you're going to get up to 50% of it back.
Yeah, it's an absolute no-brainer. There is no catch. There are no criteria that we've set within the program that you wouldn't expect with any kind of funding. So it's nothing super difficult to comply with. The idea behind it is, if I'm honest, is to encourage people to do things now rather than keep putting it off, because we have a grant fund that effectively will last for another year. But that's not to say that, that we want people to wait a year before they do something. We're encouraging them to act sooner rather than later, so that if they're looking at something that might potentially help them win new customers. So typically, most of the businesses we speak to are looking to do a couple of things that are fairly generic, looking for new customers or finding new business opportunities to increase their revenue, to digitize things. If they've had a website that maybe has been a little bit static and a little bit stale for a while, and they've got lots of other material that they'd like to show people, whether that would be audio, video, content, all sorts of interesting stuff, is to digitize it and put it all in one place so that you can reach a wider audience. The second bit is always around finding money, access to extra cash. And the third bit is typically around people and skills. So those three sort of pieces of work crop up a lot.
Pretty broad.
It is very broad, and that's the whole idea. We want to try and encourage as many people to come to us as possible. So it's not an industry sector thing or a project specific thing. We're not ruling out anyone that's a traditional business and saying we only want to deal with high tech companies. And neither are we saying that you must want to spend millions of pounds in order to do something. If you're only spending 10,000, which is still a lot of money, I'm not saying 10,000 is not, but if you were going for a big revamp of all your online marketing and sales collateral, you could easily spend £10,000, and it would be great if someone at the end of that said, well, there you go, there's £5,000 towards the cost of it. It's only cost you £5,000.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for a lot of entrepreneurs, instead of just doing things piecemeal, so we'll build a page this month and we'll do, this will enable them to do 50% more. And I love the fact that you've not got to have 3.8 employees and having been traded for 12 months or more, or no eligibility.
There are a couple. There are a couple, but they're so low. The barriers to entry are so low. We ask that a business has 3 people in it. Now, we're not, the reason we're doing that is quite simply, we're trying to appeal to businesses that are looking to scale and grow. And whilst we are completely aware that there are lots and lots of micro businesses out there where there's only 1 or 2 people in them, what we'd like to do is to try and spend the money that we have got, because it's not an infinite amount of cash, but we'd like to give it to those that are doing something sort of proactive now and trying to grow quickly. And what we found is that when you reach a critical point, which is 3 or more people, you tend to be thinking about it more as a business entity rather than a lifestyle choice. And again, I'm not knocking anyone that wants to work from home, be self-employed and just work on their own, literally by themselves. That's absolutely fantastic. But it doesn't always translate that will become a business where you're recruiting more staff and creating more value for the local economy. So hence we're trying to say, well, look, the lowest number that we could really call a growing business is 3 people. But other than that, you can work in any industry, any sector, and be pretty much at any stage of your growth, as long as you're hopefully moving in the right direction.
Thank you for clarifying. That is super useful. And I recognise from speaking to you previously, that's not 3 full-time equivalents. That's if you've got 3 people working in your business, ring up, have a conversation, and you will tell them if it can be shoehorned in.
Absolutely. And the other thing to remember is that people's businesses are dynamic. They're changing all the time. So if they haven't got 3 full-time employees today, there's a good opportunity that by the time we've had a chat with them, they might be looking at recruiting an extra person or taking someone on anyway. So I would say don't rule anything out until you've had a chat with us. At the very least, you're then on our radar and we can be talking to you about other things, even if it's not GrowthWorks. You know, we've got a fantastic growth hub team that work with micro businesses and help them in all sorts of amazing ways. And there are other pots of money, as I said, that might be more suitable if it's not GrowthWorks. So always worth having a conversation, even if you're not 100% sure you're eligible.
Amazing, thank you. And I stopped you mid-flow, so let's go back to the other part of the grant, your CapEx.
Oh yeah, the CapEx. So the CapEx is the bit that people think about most frequently when they're discussing buying bits of equipment or bits of kit. Stuff, yeah, big lumpy bits of stuff that typically sit on the balance sheet of your business. So that could be a vehicle, it could be a piece of machinery, it could be some software, anything tangible as an asset. So if you're looking to expand and grow the company and you think, well, I need more vehicles because we're going to serve a wider customer base, that's a capital expenditure. You should be coming to us and talking to us about. We have a separate pot of funding for that. There is a minimum amount of money that we look for as a project, which is £40,000, which means you would get 20 towards the cost. And at the moment, there's a maximum, which is £150,000 of grant funding towards a £300,000 project. Those numbers may change. We are looking as much as we can to be more expansive with this and to be a little bit more flexible going forward. So at the minute, those are the numbers, but there is a good opportunity for us to discuss with people if they need a bit more cash, they're looking for a little bit more support, that we might be able to do something with them that's a little bit more helpful at the top end of the programme.
Amazing. So if you are based in Cambridgeshire or Peterborough and you are about to invest in some kit, automation, manufacturing, engineering, hardware for your telecoms and digital, definitely reach out, because my goodness, if you can save that much money as 50% back. And I guess this is another point we haven't covered, is if somebody went out last week and bought it, they can't come to you, can they? This is something that has to be agreed up front.
Yeah, it's difficult, and that's the most heartbreaking bit of the whole program, to be honest with you. Occasionally we meet people who say, I wish I'd spoken to you a few months ago because I've already spent the money now. We can't put an application in for something that you've already done, sadly. So the process is really simple. We'll have a conversation with anyone. We'll talk to them about eligibility, and we'll get that out of the way first of all. We'll explain how the various different funding pots work. So if it's a revenue grant or a CapEx grant, which one they want. No reason to say they couldn't apply for 2 different grants at different times and dip into both pots. But we'll go through the application with them, which requires them to fill out a form. The form is not onerous, it's not complicated, but there is a little bit of narrative. So we're asking for a bit of explanation of what it is you want to do and why, how that will help the company grow. And then there's some supporting documentation, as you'd expect. With any sort of funding route, even if you went to your bank to get a loan, they would say to you, have you got a business plan? So most businesses that we meet have got some form of business plan which explains what they're doing, and we need to see a copy of the quote. So if you're going to spend money with an external provider, ideally we want a copy of what that quote looks like so we can see how much cash is involved. And that's pretty much it. There's not an awful lot more to it. It's really, really simple, and we will advise people at every step what's involved and how to get the application through as fast as possible, really.
And if you're dealing with somebody who's just allergic to filling in forms, maybe they're neurodivergent, or maybe it's just it's the thing that they never get round to. I'm right in saying that actually your team really want to get this money out of the door, don't they? So they would be happy to help.
Absolutely. Yeah. The only thing we can't do, I mean, and I'm sure you can appreciate why, we're not allowed to write the applications for people, because it has to be your application. It's your business ultimately. But barring that, we can support you all the way through the program, even if that means that we're working on it together. So we'll be talking about what language you're going to use, what words are going to go in, what examples you're going to use, and we'll fine-tune it with you to make sure that you only make the application once. This is the biggest bugbear for most companies when they apply for any grant funding, is they'll say the paperwork looks really confusing. There's a lot of it. I don't know what to write. And if I spend hours and hours and hours and I send it in and it's wrong, then it only ends up coming back to me. I've got to do it all over again. Is it worth the time and trouble? And the honest answer is, if it's a tiny grant that you're applying for and it's going to take hours or days out of your diary, chances are it's probably not worth it. That's not to say you shouldn't apply.
Yeah,
that's not to say you shouldn't apply, but what you do need to do is to make sure you understand the rules of engagement at the beginning. And if you're working with our team, we've got the time to do that with you. We do make time to spend with people and talk them through the process in nice, simple steps so that they understand it, they're comfortable with it, and then we put the application together to make sure all the supporting documentation is ready before it goes in. And then the review is pretty straightforward. It shouldn't bounce back. You shouldn't be missing bits and pieces.
Amazing. And I was contacted on Twitter this week to ask what somebody described as a really daft question, but actually I would argue it's not daft at all. If you need to ask it, then we haven't been clear. Grants don't have to be repaid, do they? They're not a loan.
That's not a daft question at all. And it's amazing how many people who have never applied for a grant don't understand. No, it's not like a loan. There's no interest applied to it. You don't pay it back. It is really it's an example of collaboration. That's the way I would put it. The local authority in this instance wants to collaborate with businesses. They want to be seen to be supporting them and standing shoulder to shoulder, toe to toe, and saying, come on, we'll go 50-50s, we'll go halves on this. You put half in, we'll put half in, we'll do it together.
That was a blooming great explanation. Thank you very much.
Oh, that's my pleasure.
And for any of the terminology that we've used today, if capital expenditure or CapEx is just not in your vocabulary, the first point of call would be the people who are giving out the grant. GrowthWorks can absolutely support you with any of your inverted commas silly questions. They're not silly. If you need the answers, then ask the questions. And also, you'd be surprised how many more people ask the same one. So we need to be better at educating you with how these things work. And I totally take that on board to take forward as how can we myth bust and demystify this process to encourage more and more people to apply for grants? Because I don't know about you, Gary, but we see the same people applying for grants over and over and over again. Anything they can get their hands on, they're looking at grants nationally, regionally, sector specific. But what about everyone else who's never ever been for one? What would be your advice?
Well, I think you picked up on a really good point there, which is that you have to ask yourself the question, if you're seeing people that are applying for grants or multiple grants, they've obviously realised something. They've cottoned on to something here, which is that it's worth the effort, it's worth the trouble. Once you understand the rules of the game, it's really simple. It's like anything. Someone just needs to show you, and that's what we're here to do. So my advice would be, don't put it off, because inevitably we're all bad at this. We'll say, yeah, I've seen something, I'll make a note, I'll get around to having a look tomorrow, which turns into next week, which
it's on the list.
Inevitably, then by the time you get around to it, you'll come back and you'll say, I wish I'd done it sooner because I could have applied for more, or that money's not there anymore. No grant fund is indefinite. So don't put it off. At least have the conversation with us. You might find that it clarifies things, but you don't feel you're ready to make the application right now, but at least you'll know when you are ready what you need to do, and you'll have the contact details of people to speak to. And the second thing is, be bold and be adventurous. We talk to people all the time about the fact that, the word recession gets used an awful lot at the moment in the press. And whether we are or aren't in the grip of a recession won't affect a lot of businesses' success. Those that really are prepared to back themselves and think they've got a great product or a great service and there's an opportunity in the market for them to grow, they will go ahead and do things. They'll be ambitious. They won't sit tight and wait to ride the storm out, which is what some people would say is the safer bet, because they know if they wait until next year to do something and everyone else is doing it, then you've got no competitive advantage whatsoever. If you're prepared to move now and make a little bit of extra effort, by the time your competitors catch, well, they won't catch up. By the time they try and catch up, you'll already be on the next lap. So that's my advice. Look at things now. There's a great opportunity in the market. There are lots of customers out there wanting to buy goods and services who just want a little bit more innovation from their providers and their suppliers. So if you're doing anything innovative or creative or improving your offer, and that could be something as simple as your website and your marketing, don't put it off until next year. Think about doing it now.
Fantastic. Is there anything we haven't covered in today's episode that you think we should just loop back and go over?
Well, the first thing I would say is that people need to go to the website, because all the information is there. And if they want to spend a bit of time perusing all of the different support that we offer, because GrowthWorks isn't just about grants. There's lots and lots of other free stuff on there that's absolutely amazing, that's part of the program, including coming to webinars and events and networking and connecting with other interesting people, which you can access completely free. And you don't have to apply for a grant at all. You know, you can just access all of that stuff. So you should definitely go and have a look at the website. You should definitely have a think about speaking to one of the advisors just to get a little bit more insight into how we can help you specifically, how we can tailor something to you. And there's lots of case study material as well. If you want to find out if other businesses a little bit like yours have done something similar, where they've been successful already, again, have a look at that. There's tons of stuff out there on the website, and we can provide, you know, introductions. If you want to speak to someone and find out how they were successful and what they did, rather than just read it on the website, we can introduce you to some people that have been through it.
Brilliant. Gary, thank you so much. And we will be sure to put the links into all of the bios and everywhere that we market this episode. Thank you so much for joining us today. The last thing that I want to add in is just to put a date on your radar. If you are listening, Tuesday, the 15th of November, we're holding something called Money Fest in Cambridge, Milton Keynes and Birmingham. It's a whole day of meeting funders just like Gary, finding out about grant funding, crowdfunding, angel investment, VC funding, traditional bank funding. So it's not about people trying to sell stuff to you. It's about understanding the landscape, signposting who you can speak to and where you can find out more. So if this has really whet your appetite and you want to find out more, get that date in your diary, Tuesday, the 15th of November, between 10 and 4 in those 3 locations. We would love to meet you there. Gary, thanks again for your time today.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you very much indeed. Really enjoyed it.
See you soon.